Hello and welcome to the show where I try to review comic books before I die in TF2. Today we got Deadly Class Volume 1 Reagan Youth. It's really good. Deadly Class is a very special series to me. It was one of the first series I really got into, but I think for the most part it's somewhat overshadowed by others like it. It doesn't have the critically acclaimed adaptations like The Walking Dead or Invincible. It doesn't have the sales of a series like Saga or Chew, but what it does have is a character that has sex with farm animals. No. Deadly Class is a comic book series published by Image Comics that ran from 2014 until its finale in 2022. That's 56 issues, 12 volumes, and a whole lot of fatal institution. It was written by Remender and illustrated by Wes Craig. I can't go over the whole series in this video since it takes me almost 50 minutes to talk about a series that's less than half the length of this one.
Get over there!
So I'm going to talk about the first 6 issues that comprises the first volume. I thought of originally reviewing each issue sequentially like I did with my Fairyland video, but I'm gonna try doing the classic YouTube reviewer and split up this video into segments and talk about each component to the series independently. The segments are as follows: the concept, the characters, the story, and the artwork. I'll start this segment by going over the cover of this volume. I picked up this series years ago when the show was first announced. Generally, when a comic book series gets greenlit for a TV or movie adaptation, it's probably worth reading. So I got volume 1, even though this cover didn't leave the best impression. Yes, we are literally judging this book by its cover. Comic books need a good cover in order to grab the attention of the average comic book consumer. Otherwise, no one's gonna care, and the most value it'll have is taking up the shelf space at Mile High's Infinite Corridor.
The Infinite Corridor is a route to many other worlds.
If a comic book has a bad cover, that in the industry is what we call a bad thing. Having said all that, how does Deadly Class fare? Well, not that great, honestly. The first thing I notice is that it's very similar to the cover of the Walking Dead compendiums. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10 for originality, but the accurately illustrated skeletons definitely give it at least some points. The next thing that bothered me is this heading, I guess you could call it on the back here. Survival is extra credit. Yeah, kind of a cheesy line. Needless to say, I wasn't that impressed going into this for the first time. The premise itself is pretty unimpressive too. It's about a creepy secret sneaker school that teaches kids how to kill people, and the deadly situations that our characters find themselves in when they disobey the rules. Now that's a very oversimplified synopsis of the plot, but that's just it. What this story is about goes way deeper than the admittedly uninteresting concept. Yeah, it's about a fantastical school with equally fantastical and dramatic characters running it, where survival is extra credit. But what makes this series so amazing is everything that surrounds the school. The story isn't about a kid learning how to kill people, it's about a kid coming to grips with his fears, his frustrations, his doubts, his flaws. In fact, the school is so unimportant, the name of the place isn't given until the last page of the first issue. I feel like most writers would have introduced the primary setting way earlier, but Rick Remender is just savage like that. The last time I talked about a graphic novel, the concept was really carrying that series, whereas with the case of Deadly Class, the concept is only the framework for a complex, nuanced, and furiously gripping saga of 3-dimensional characters living in a disturbing world. The concept of a school that teaches kids how to kill people is already a really goofy premise to me, especially in the second issue where we see an average class schedule and it's all things like Period 1, Gun History, Period 2, Murder Algebra.
You don't wanna fucking mess with me, but
Period 3, AP Eckill-nomics. So as much as I like this series and it's admittedly kind of lame concept, it's definitely not really the main selling point of this series. Like, if you're gonna tell someone that you should read Deadly Class, it's not gonna be like, oh, it's so sick, it's about this kid and he goes to school and he teaches him how to like kill people at the school. It doesn't really matter. That's not really why people like this series. It's not why people have fell in love with it like I did. We're introduced to a lot of people very quickly in this first volume, but the only ones that are important are Marcus, Willie, Saya, Maria, Chico, and Chester. With such a large cast of characters and a name like Deadly Class and a cover like The Walking Dead, you know 50% of these characters we meet in this volume are gonna die. We start by introducing Marcus. He's a down-on-his-luck, homeless Nicaraguan kid living in Otsego, Minnesota. Let me tell you, all skepticism for this series based on the cover was instantly vaporized by its first pages. Just in one interaction, I was hooked. The irony and unfairness of the world from the perspective perspective of our protagonist was shown in such a clever and interesting way. I was honestly shocked at how fast my initial judgment of this series changed in the first 2 pages. Like, apocalyptic threats have been vanquished in less time than it took for Deadly Class to hook me in. The first issue is such an amazing first impression for the themes and tone of this series. We get such a detailed glimpse into Marcus as a person in this first issue. He's introspective, as seen through his journaling that makes up the narration. He's angsty, but not in like a lame-o fake way, a real and believable and understandable way. He's cynical, but not miserable to read like a lot of other cynical characters.
Refer to me as like the Rick friend because like I'm smart and all I do is talk shit about everything because it's fun. Being a hater is fun.
We see his sense of justice, where his values lie, his strong will. Most of all, this introduction gets the audience to sympathize with Marcus, making his eventual descent into self-destructive debauchery all the more tragic and hard to believe. Spoilers, by the way. This intro also has the added intrigue of the mysterious figure stalking Marcus from afar. Very relatable. Now is a good time as any to comment on the fantastic dialogue that persists throughout the whole series. There's not much interaction in the first issue, but the exchanges that are there are really natural and full of character. By the next issue, we meet the other main characters, Willie, Saya, and Maria, among a few others. Besides Marcus, the most fleshed out character in this volume has to be Willie. He and Marcus become friends pretty quickly, so there's a lot of time spent developing their relationship, which gives more opportunity to learn more about his character. All of the characters we see will eventually get really interesting backstories, bigger stakes in the plot, and overall more depth. The ones that don't die within a week at least. Now, is there a discussion about the ethics of writing a story that involves children being brutally murdered, brutally murdering others, or worst of all, having premarital sex? No, now shut up and look at this funny picture. We see these characters develop friendships and bonds over the course of this volume in a surprisingly natural way. We see them bicker and fight as well as share tender and wholesome 100 moments together. And by that I mean commit unpardonable sins while under the abusive influence of drugs.
And if you do drugs, you go to hell before you die.
The antagonist of this volume is Chico, Maria's boyfriend. He follows them all the way to Las Vegas because he understandably doesn't like it when his girlfriend cheats on him with a lanky, depressive, fake Mexican who has weird scars, has no parents, no money, very little social skills, will grow up to be a failed sci-fi novelist. He also hates Ronald Reagan, so he's probably liberal. Listen, I hate the Smiths as much as the next guy, but I think Chico might be taking it a little far here. What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to hit that like button. There's not much to Chico's character. He's just kind of a meanie head, and that's all we really know about him. We'll learn more about him and especially his family and their relationship to Maria in later issues, but for right now, a pretty surface level antagonist is okay since we spend so much time getting to know the main cast. I guess Victor is an antagonist too. He's more of just a generic Flash Thompson level bully rather than a genuine threat to the characters' lives like Chico. Victor's kind of like Dash Baxter if he grew up in California.
Yeah, S-A-double-N-A.
The last antagonist is Chester, who we meet at the very end of this volume. He's not going to be important until the next volume though. This was just a way to tease a more major villain for the rest of the series. All you need to know about Chester is that today, he's what we would call a Pokemon fan.
There's no laws against the Pokemon, Batman.
The characters are really what make this series so special. We're going to see these characters affect each other for better and for worse. By the end of this volume, it really feels like a strongly knit band of friends facing heavy and, dare I say, deadly circumstances. Which leads me right into...
Because if you say Grandma Brownie's chocolate chunker wonker bunkers now with even bigger chunks of chocolate chunks, then I'm gonna say Grandma Brownie's chocolate chunker wonker bunkers now with even bigger chunks of chocolate chunks. And then you're gonna say, did you just say Grandma Brownie's chocolate chunker wonker bunkers?
Did you just say Grandma Brownie's chocolate chunker wonker bunkers now with even bigger chunks of chocolate chunks?
I sure did, goofball.
You think this is funny?
In a cosmic sort of way, yes.
Well, Mr. Funny Man, is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary crabby... Oh my goodness!
How the hell you gonna oot with snoops in the fucking line droot with noops if you ain't got no poop with snoops? The poop with snoops is the fucking the boot.
The king of fiction writing, Richard Scarry, once said, "A story is only as good as its characters." I've made it clear that Deadly Class has good characters, so what about the actual plot these silly little rascals find themselves unraveling? This first volume has a pretty simple narrative that's easy to follow and full of engaging twists and turns. It starts by introducing our protagonist, introducing the school, Marcus and Willie failing an assignment for one of their STEM classes. Marcus has to spend the weekend in the box, but Saya sneaks him out and our band of teenagers go on a drug and violence-fueled extravaganza in Las Vegas. Yes, they really go to Las Vegas for half the volume. That's so far away from the school. In case I didn't make it clear enough that the school really isn't important. It's called Deadly Class, and we have effectively spent 1 out of 6 issues in the school itself. The story weaves in and out of these really serious and dark moments to honestly really funny and awkward moments. I really forgot how funny this first volume really is. There really aren't that many comedic moments throughout the whole series, so it's almost strange that there are at least a quantifiable number of them in this volume. That quantifiable number being like 3. There's the scene with all the disgusting hippie Grateful Dead fans. There's the scene in the elevator. There's all the times Marcus is high off of disgusting Grateful Dead fan hippie drugs. Even though the humor works really well, it doesn't really diminish the really tense moments, especially at the volume's amazing climax. The ending of this volume really solidifies this as one of the best series you can read right now. It was such a real and personal journey we went through with all these characters leading up to an ending that's exciting, intense, emotional, and suspenseful. Wait, I got the wrong comic. Now, for my favorite part of any comic book series.
Allow me to destroy your gallery. That I love. I absolutely.
The artwork for this series is done by Wes Craig. I love his artwork for Deadly Class, starting about right here. His art isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but there's some pretty iffy panels sprinkled around this book. What might be lacking in the craftsmanship of the illustrations in some cases is definitely made up for with Wes's stellar direction. The way the pages are laid out is so unique and creative. He uses a very unorthodox structure for his panels, but it's not done just to look cool like in a series like Spawn. No, the way the panels are connected and broken up is very intentional and adds so much depth to the tone of each scene. For example, in issue 1, there's a chase scene where Marcus and Saya are fleeing from the cops. Since it's from the perspective of Marcus, who has no idea what's going on, obviously, the panels are jagged and stopping and starting abruptly to show just how chaotic it feels for Marcus in this scene. There's another scene where Willie is telling Marcus about his childhood. The flashbacks are made to look like pages of another graphic novel placed crookedly into the pages of this one. It's so cool. There's a lot of really imaginative ways that Wes plays with the presentation. He also really uses black in a cool way too. The shadows of the characters always add another element of drama and weight to the scene. Another great thing is Lee leverages excellent colors. The feeling of each scene is almost always displayed by the color palette alone. The environments almost always give the scene such an instantaneously palpable tone. Pungent greens and chilling blues often wash out our characters in a layer of thick atmosphere. The colors are sometimes used to show a dramatic change in tone, like in issue 1 when we go from the cold, hopeless streets of Otsego to the warm and lively streets of Wisconsin. I don't know where to fit this in, but I just want to say that I think the school photos of all the characters are really funny. Wes Craig is really good at making covers too. I've seen some of his non-Deadly Class related covers, and I can say with full confidence that Wes Craig is what we call in the industry a certified G. Seriously, he makes some of the best covers I've ever seen, and consistently too. Overall, I'm gonna give Deadly Class Volume 1 Reagan Youth a 5 out of 5 stars. With clever writing, snappy dialogue, engaging drama, three-dimensional characters, and gorgeous artwork, I can tell just from this book that this series is gonna be crazy. And by that I mean it sucks and you should read I Hate Fairyland instead.
You crossed that line so many times, I don't know slanging ass.